Good afternoon. From the Wannit News Desk for your 8 o'clock news. My name is Aiden, and I have a question for our viewers out there. Do you know what is on August 15th? It is the Korean Independence Day, and it is called 광복절, which is the memorable day for all Koreans. As a commemoration of 광복절, we have our reporters live at the scenes covering the news at 서대문 형무소.
There was a period of time which Korea was ruled by the Japanese. This is important to know before going in the Sodaemun prison, which was used to keep the Korean independence patriots.
This year is the 77th anniversary of the Korean independence. This is the reason why we are here today. Many tortures and inhumane acts were held in this place. Now follow me to the inside of the building. 서대문 prison was opened in October 1908, built by the Japanese, and was used as a prison for 80 years. The prison was built in a distinctive structure, a panopticon shape, which allowed guards to watch over the prisoners effectively during the Japanese colonial period. The Japanese suppressed the Korean activists in numerous inhumane ways, and many activists and patriots were imprisoned, tortured, and died. After the Japanese colonial period, the prison was demolished. But in order to remember the pain of our ancestors, we did not demolish the building completely for historical importance. The prison was reopened on November 5, 1988. Now, the 서대문 prison stands as a symbol of Korea's independence and democracy. And now to Sarah and Olivia.
Hi, my name is Sarah. My name is Olivia. And we'll be taking a closer look of the prison. Before being renamed to Sodaemun Prison in 1912, it was called Gyeongsan Prison and changed to Sodaemun 형무소 in 1923. The size of the prison was originally 1,600 meters squared, but it had to be expanded by 30 times because there were too many Korean independence activists. There used to be 500 people in the prison, but on March 1st, 1919, the number skyrocketed to 3,000 because of the many independence fighters that were arrested during the March 1st movement. Countless prisoners in the Sodaemun prison died from the brutal treatment until liberation in 1945. Not just the activists, but students and workers who fought the Japanese were also imprisoned and tortured. Also, the Japanese forbid Koreans from using their language and tried to get rid of Korean culture by using harsh rules and slavery. Despite this situation, our ancestors continued the movement for independence and fought endlessly against the Japanese to recover our country. Then Kaylee will explain about the major incidents during the Japanese colonial period.
In November 1910, the Japanese formed a conspiracy to assassinate their own governor-general in Korea. They formed this plan because they wanted to arrest more Koreans. By the end of it, more than 160 Korean patriots were arrested, and the incident was called the Wannit incident. The Japanese accused the Shinminhwae as people who were planning conspiracies as well. Then they interrogated and arrested the Shinminhwae members. This led to 105 more patriots imprisoned and was called the 105-person incident. The Wannit incident and 105-person incident show how the Korean independence activists were unfairly treated back in the day.
Hi, my name is Anna, and I will be introducing the struggles that independence activists went through for Korea's freedom. The heroic struggle supported the movement and recovery of Korea's independence. This was done by targeting well-known Japanese figures and Koreans who were on Japanese side. The Japanese had lots of casualties in the end. Since the Japanese didn't allow Koreans to gather together, thinking that the Koreans may plan something, Korean independence activists had to gather secretly and sometimes even abroad to plan their independence projects. These secret organizations collected money to support the plans to attack pro-Japanese Koreans, Japanese police, and military bases. The independence activists could be classified into 3 groups based on how they are involved. First, Yersa was a person who risked their lives and fought with force. Second, Uisa, similar to Yersa, but they fought only with their body. Last but not least, Chisa were people who devoted to their country and resisted the enemies. Each group had an important role in the fight for Korean independence.
Hi, I'm Justin.
And I'm Jun.
The course explained well about the unfair treatment that independence activists got from the Japanese.
That's right. It is very horrible. Now we'll explain about the declaration of Korean independence and the Junta's independence movement.
The Koreans planned it and participated in many independence movements, but the most famous one is definitely the March 1st independence movement.
The independence movement on March 1st was a movement that gathered Koreans all around the country to fight against the Japanese rulers.
This movement was important because it was the official day Koreans announced their independence and liberty.
Koreans wanted independence desperately, so people started the movement in Seoul. Then it spread throughout the whole country.
Yes, as a matter of fact, it was a movement that showed the whole world the purpose of Korea's freedom.
You could say it was also an important turning point that united the Koreans together to fight against the Japanese.
After the movement, Koreans finally created a government in Shanghai, China. It was the first Republic of Korea government.
I remember there was another major movement. Oh yeah, the Junta's independence movement was the second largest protest after the March 1st movement.
You're right. It is also known for the 600 students in the crowd shouting "Hurrah for independence." Now Sean and Justin will explain about what happened to the activists who were arrested during this movement.
Would you believe if Japan's treatment towards Koreans is known to be one of the most wicked war crimes in history? When Korea was ruled by the Japanese tortured and carried out inhumane acts on Koreans. The reason why Japanese did this was to overpower the Korean population. There is a lot of atrocities.
We are now at a place where we can see all the cruel acts. The torture chamber. The types of torture we know of were water torture, fingernail torture, and narrow room torture.
As you can see inside this room, Japanese hung the prisoners upside down and forced their heads into the water or filled their noses and mouths with water. This torture technique made the prisoner feel as if they were drowning.
Another torture was the fingernail torture, which was done by piercing a sharp needle-like spear underneath the fingernails. In some cases, they also poked inside the prisoner's mouth. This sometimes led to fainting due to severe pain.
The last torture is the narrow room torture. It is a type of torture which the Japanese lock the prisoners inside a locker-sized box. This room had narrow walls which made the prisoners impossible to sit or stand properly. They would put the prisoners in the box for such a long period of time and would even sometimes tie their ankles together, which made it ideally impossible to move. When the prisoners were let out of the locker, their legs would be paralyzed and couldn't move properly.
The Koreans that supported independence movement were caught and dragged to the interrogation room here in Sodom prison, not in police stations. Before the interrogation, some prisoners were sent to temporary detention rooms.
Why were the temporary detention rooms so close to the torture rooms?
They were purposely placed near the other torture rooms to make the prisoners hear the painful screams and moans of other patriots. This mentally tortured the prisoners before interrogation and gave them a sense of fear and horror, so they would confess all the things they know. Do you know where they were taken to after the interrogation?
After the interrogation, the prisoners would be put into a solitary room where there was no food nor toilet, so the prisoners had to use a bucket instead of a bathroom. Moreover, some prisoners were said to eat their own excretion due to hunger in the solitary room. Of course, the crying and moaning of other prisoners were heard in this room as well. The prisoners in the solitary cell had to go through all these sufferings.
In spite of all of this, the independence activists still shouted hurrah in support of Korea's independence. I guess their will was stronger than the Japanese suppression. When the tortured prisoners faced death, their bodies would be taken to the dead body pickup room. This room was to hide all the evidence of inhumane torturing, because if they don't burn all the bodies, people could find out that patriots died through deadly tortures. Altogether, many independence activists, as well as many innocent people who fought for liberation, died and were taken to this room.
From here, we'll be looking around the prison cells and how the life it was like living in Sodom prison. In the 1920s, the Central Prison Guard building was built for monitoring other buildings like prison number 10, 11, and 12. It was built in a panopticon structure which allowed the guards to watch those three prisons from one spot. The first floor was an office space and entrance to the prison. The second floor was a correctional education facility for prisoners. Some prisoners were locked up in normal cells, but other prisoners like patriots and activists were locked up in solitary cells of prison building number 12. These cells were even smaller than normal cells, and they were built to torture the prisoner both mentally and physically. Solitary cells were pitch black with no electricity and were called ink rooms. So prisoners couldn't tell if it was day or night, not to mention having no toilets. Thus, prisoners had to use a hole in the floorboard as a toilet, and the waste flowed out of the building directly. Life inside a cell was really miserable. Most of the time was spent locked up in cells or working in factories. The cells were originally designed to fit 4 to 5 people, but about 30 inmates were crammed to live together. So they had no other option but to take turns sleeping while others would keep walking around to prevent the legs from going numb. Also, there were no toilets, heating and cooling systems, so many prisoners died of heat and frostbite. With so many prisoners in a single cell, they had to use a signaling device called a pet tone to inform an emergency or to call the guard. Inside the cell was a hall with a small road to push. When a prisoner pushed it, a stick would fall out so that the guard could see the stick or hear it fall out in the hallway and would come to the cell. Also, the prisoners had their own signals to talk to each other secretly. They exchanged secret messages with a code they created with letters of Hangul by tapping on the wall.
Hi Alice, why are we here?
We are going to see the prisoner's meal kata.
I heard about kata, but I don't know exactly what it is.
It's okay, I'll tell you. Kata is a meal that prisoners used to eat in Sodaemun prison. It was made of beans, millet, and brown rice.
Did every prisoner get the same amount of food?
No, they had different grades from 1 to 10, which gave different amounts of food.
Why were prisoners divided into grades?
Their grade depended on their jail sentence and how much work they had done.
Oh, I see. I also heard about the things that decide the quantity of kata.
Yes, the guards put this round bar inside the cup and put kata in the remaining space. For example, when a prisoner's grade was 1, they got 380 grams of kata.
I also found out that when the prisoner grade was 10, they got less than 180 grams of kata.
That's true. I think that must have been very hard for them to survive. Anna, do you know about this place?
We are in a field in front of the execution building.
Oh, what is that fallen tree?
That over there is called a wailing poplar.
I heard this tree had a sad story behind it.
Yes, independent activists who were treated unfairly and taken to this execution building grabbed this tree and wailed before getting executed.
Then what about the smaller tree?
This was a sapling that grew naturally from the poplar's roots in April 2016. Do you know anything about that building?
This is the execution building. It was built around 1960. Let's take a closer look of the inside.
Oh, what is that hanging from the ceiling?
It is the rope that was used for hanging the prisoner's neck. When the lever was pulled, the trapdoor opened underneath.
Oh my, I guess this place has a very gloomy and painful history. Now, let's go meet Sarah at the exercise facility.
And now we're at the 격벽장. The 격벽장 was built for prisoners to do simple exercise. Exercising here means just walking and getting some sunlight. In my opinion, I don't think we can even call it exercising. The prisoners didn't have enough space to do anything, and there were rows in between each prisoners. And also, the Japanese guards were closely watching them from the center of this place.
In Sodaemun prison, the men and women were separated, so in 1918, the Japanese built the women's cells to keep the anti-Japanese women independence activists. This was an important place because many heroic women activists from all across the country were imprisoned here during 1910 to 1945. Among the cells of the building, Prison cell number 8 was the place where a number of women independence leaders were imprisoned for their heroic action in March 1st independence movement in 1919. As I said, there were many women activists here, but you may have all heard of her name, Yoo Kwon-sun. The most outstanding women leader in the March 1st movement, being only 16 years old when she was imprisoned in prison cell number 8. The cell had a basement which was used as a warehouse to store extra blankets in summer. However, some say that Yoo Kwon-sun was kept there as a special penalty for her distinctive leadership role in the independence movement. Yoo Kwon-sun and other female independence activists that were in the cell cried out 대한독립 만세, which meant long live Korean independence on March 1st, 1920, to remember the first anniversary of the March 1st independence movement. They continued to fight and resist the Japanese while being in the cell. Sadly, on September 28, 1920, Yoo Kwon-sun died from the constant torture and beatings in the prison. This was only 2 days before she was supposed to be released from the prison.
As you may heard, 서대문 형무소 holds lots of sorrow for our dear patriots and the proud efforts they made for our independence. It is important to remember the historical events that happened in that place, so we know how we got our freedom. Anyways, that's it for today 8 o'clock news. This has been Aiden and our Wannit News Desk reporters bringing you the latest news. Thank you for joining us and see you next time.